Salt. You've been told your entire life that salt will kill you, but the people telling you have been wrong in a way that's almost embarrassing. The panic started in the 1970s, when a single study suggested sodium raised blood pressure in everyone equally. It didn't. What followed was decades of recommendations to slash salt intake, guidelines that persisted even as newer research showed the relationship was far more complicated. Your body actually needs sodium. It regulates fluid balance, powers nerve signals, and keeps your muscles contracting. The fear wasn't based on evidence. It was based on oversimplification. What current research shows is that for most people, moderate sodium intake has no meaningful effect on blood pressure. For some, it matters slightly. For others, it doesn't matter at all. The thing everyone missed is that your kidneys actively regulate sodium. Eat too much and you excrete it. Your body keeps what it needs and discards the rest. The real problem isn't salt. It's processed food loaded with salt alongside refined carbohydrates and seed oils that actually do damage your cardiovascular system. Blaming salt alone is like blaming the salt shaker while ignoring everything else on the table. Whole milk. Imagine being raised on powdered skim milk because your parents genuinely believed that whole milk was bad for you. The low-fat craze started in the 1980s when someone decided fat was the enemy. Whole milk got caught in that panic and got replaced with skim milk, low-fat milk, and powdered substitutes. The problem is that fat isn't the villain, it's essential. Fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K only absorb efficiently with dietary fat. Drink skim milk and your body struggles to use the calcium and vitamins you're consuming. What manufacturers did to compensate tells you everything. They added sugar. Low-fat milk tastes like sadness, so they sweetened it. You traded real fat for refined carbohydrates that spike insulin and leave you hungry an hour later. Whole milk keeps you satiated longer, provides fat-soluble vitamins in their most bioavailable form, and contains compounds like butyrate that feed your gut bacteria. Not to mention, it tastes considerably better. Red meat. Your body needs things that only red meat can effectively give you, but you've spent years feeling guilty for craving it. Red meat got blamed for cholesterol in the 1980s, a panic that's since been thoroughly debunked. Dietary cholesterol barely affects blood cholesterol in most people. Your liver produces cholesterol based on carbohydrate intake, not how much steak you eat. What red meat actually provides is irreplaceable. Heme iron your body absorbs efficiently, B12 your nervous system depends on, creatine your muscles use directly, and carnosine that protects against oxidative stress. Chicken has protein. Red meat has protein plus micronutrients in forms your body recognizes and uses immediately. A ribeye contains more bioavailable iron than a chicken breast will ever deliver, and that matters when your energy depends on oxygen transport. The saturated fat concern has been systematically overstated in the research. Red meat fits perfectly into a healthy diet when you're not pairing it with refined carbohydrates. The Chick-fil-A cows may tell you to eat more chicken, but red meat is one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can have. Coffee. Coffee was supposed to destroy your heart. Instead, it might be one of the few things you're doing right. In the 1970s and 1980s, coffee got blamed for high blood pressure, heart disease, and basically everything else. Studies showed associations between coffee consumption and increased cholesterol. People quit drinking it. Then the research changed. What current studies actually show is that moderate coffee consumption is linked to lower all-cause mortality. Caffeine is a cognitive enhancer. It increases alertness, improves focus, and helps your brain work faster. The antioxidants in coffee are substantial, comparable to what you'd get from eating several servings of fruit. Coffee drinkers have better cardiovascular health than non-drinkers, lower rates of Parkinson's disease, and reduced suicide risk. The fear around coffee was greatly unfounded. The mechanism was misunderstood. Coffee doesn't spike blood pressure in any meaningful way for regular drinkers because your body develops tolerance quickly. 3 to 4 cups daily is where research suggests benefits are the highest, so your so-called morning vice isn't actually a vice at all. Tallow and lard. Your grandmother cooked with these. Then seed oil showed up and promised to be better. They lied. Animal fats got abandoned because of cholesterol fears that didn't pan out. Tallow and lard were replaced with vegetable oils, canola, soybean, safflower, that were supposed to be healthier. What happened instead is that seed oils became dominant in processed food and restaurant cooking, and inflammatory markers in the population increased significantly. Tallow and lard are stable at high heat. Seed oils oxidize when heated, creating toxic compounds your body treats as damage. Tallow contains oleic acid, the same heart-healthy fat in olive oil. Lard is also high in oleic acid and contains compounds that support cardiovascular health. Your ancestors cooked with animal fat for thousands of years. Not because they were particularly fond of hunting, but because it was nutritionally sensible. The switch to seed oils happened because they were cheap and shelf-stable, not because they were better. The health implications of that trade are now becoming clear. Seed oil consumption correlates with increased inflammation, oxidative stress, and metabolic dysfunction. Tallow and lard were never the problem. They were replaced with something much worse. Eggs. The cholesterol scare around eggs was so effective that people still won't eat the yolks, even though that's where all the actual nutrition is found. Eggs got demonized because they contained dietary cholesterol, and someone decided dietary cholesterol caused heart disease. But as we know from the section on red meat, that's not how it works. Your liver produces cholesterol based on carbohydrate intake and stress levels, not how many eggs you eat. Most people's blood cholesterol barely moves when they add eggs to their diet. The fear was never justified by evidence. What the yolk actually contains is remarkable. Choline for brain health, lutein for eye health, selenium for thyroid function, and nearly every nutrient your body needs. Egg whites have protein. Yolks have the nutrition. Eating only egg whites is like buying a car and throwing away the engine. Eggs are complete proteins. They contain all 9 essential amino acids in ratios your body can use. They're not exactly inexpensive, but they're cheaper than they used to be. They're versatile. They keep you satiated for hours. The cholesterol panic buried a food that's nutritionally nearly perfect. Cheese. Cheese became the villain for one reason: fat. Everything else followed from that one mistake. Saturated fat concerns about cheese came from the same place they came from with whole milk: the idea that all fat was bad. Cheese got lumped in even though what you're actually eating is fundamentally different from what the low-fat panic imagined. Cheese is fermented dairy. Fermentation changes everything. The process breaks down lactose, creates beneficial bacterial compounds, and makes nutrients more bioavailable. When manufacturers tried to replace cheese with low-fat alternatives, they created something worse. Processed cheese spreads contain emulsifiers, thickeners, and additives your body doesn't recognize. Low-fat cheese tastes like plastic because it essentially is. You knew this already. Real cheese contains compounds that support cardiovascular health and gut bacteria. The fermentation process creates bioavailable forms of calcium and vitamin K2, which directs calcium into your bones instead of your arteries. The fat panic was the same one that haunted whole milk for decades. Cheese wasn't the villain then, and it isn't the villain now. Potatoes. Potatoes are carbs, and everyone's convinced carbs are the enemy, so potatoes became collateral damage. The carb demonization caught potatoes in the crossfire, even though potatoes aren't what people think carbs are. A plain baked potato has a high satiety index. It keeps you full longer than almost any other food. The problem isn't the potato. The problem is what you do to it. Deep fry it, load it with toppings, pair it with refined oils and processed meat. The potato never asked for that. Potatoes have more potassium than bananas, fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and resistant starch when cooled that behaves like dietary fiber. Comparing a baked potato to white bread or refined sugar is comparing something that actually nourishes you to something that spikes insulin and leaves you hungry an hour later. Potatoes work completely differently. The carb panic focused on the wrong targets. Potatoes are carbs, but they're whole food carbs with nutrients intact. They're a whole lot better for you than junk food or sugared cereal, and that distinction is important. Bacon. You've been told bacon will give you cancer. The amount you eat and the context surrounding that claim completely changes the story. The processed meat panic was really about nitrates. These compounds found in bacon were blamed for causing cancer. What they failed to mention is that a single strip of bacon contains negligible nitrates compared to the nitrates in a bowl of spinach. And nobody's telling you to stop eating salad. Bacon from properly raised pastured pigs delivers protein, B vitamins, selenium, and choline for brain health. It's also a good source of omega-3 fatty acids and fat-soluble vitamins. The fear was overblown because it treated all processed meat as one category and never bothered to separate what was actually dangerous from what wasn't. A hot dog loaded with fillers and chemical additives is not the same food as bacon, and the studies that terrified everyone never made that distinction. Eating bacon occasionally as part of a diet rich in vegetables and whole foods presents no meaningful cancer risk. The science was never as clean as the headlines made it sound, and the foods that got condemned weren't always the ones doing the damage. Chocolate. Chocolate spent decades being treated like a guilty pleasure instead of food, but dark chocolate is full of compounds that actually improve your health. Dark chocolate contains polyphenols, flavonoids, and antioxidants in concentrations comparable to superfoods like blueberries. These compounds reduce inflammation, support cardiovascular health, and protect your cells from oxidative damage. Cocoa flavonols improve blood flow, lower blood pressure, and enhance cognitive function. Research consistently shows that dark chocolate consumption correlates with better cardiovascular outcomes and reduced mortality risk. The problem is, chocolate got lumped into the candy category and stayed there, even though dark chocolate is a nutritionally dense food. Milk chocolate is different. It's loaded with sugar and minimal cocoa. Dark chocolate with 70% cocoa or higher is genuinely healthy. Your brain works better when you eat it. Your cardiovascular system functions more efficiently. The compounds are bioavailable and easy for your body to use. The only reason chocolate spent decades as a guilty pleasure is because someone decided dessert couldn't be healthy. Dark chocolate proved them wrong. Bread. Not all bread is the same, but the blanket fear of carbs buried the distinction between good bread and the stuff that's basically sugar in loaf form. Gluten fears and carb demonization caught real bread in the crossfire. Commercial bread is refined flour, added sugar, and seed oils. It's not food, it's filler. Both sourdough and whole grain bread are fundamentally different, and both are better than commercial white bread, just for different reasons. Sourdough wins because of fermentation. The process breaks down gluten, reduces the glycemic load, and creates beneficial bacterial compounds. Your body processes sourdough differently than white bread because fermentation changes the nutrient structure entirely. Much like potatoes, whole grain bread feeds the good bacteria in your gut, acts like dietary fiber, and slows down how fast sugar hits your bloodstream. The carbs in whole grain flour don't spike insulin the way refined flour does. The blanket fear of carbs and gluten buried those differences. White sandwich bread is soft, cheap, and honestly kinda perfect. But because it shares a name with real bread got blamed for problems it didn't cause. Peanut butter. Fat in peanut butter was supposed to make you fat. Your body actually needs that fat, and satiety is the part everyone missed. The too much fat myth around peanut butter came from the same place it came from with everything else in the low-fat era. Peanut butter contains protein and fat in ratios that keep your hunger satisfied for hours. The fat isn't the problem, it's the solution. Fat slows digestion, stabilizes blood sugar, and makes you feel full so you don't overeat later. What peanut butter actually contains is nutrient-dense: vitamin E for antioxidant protection, magnesium for muscle and nerve function, potassium for electrolyte balance. Remove the fat and you get something that tastes like cardboard and leaves you hungry immediately. Low-fat peanut butter is basically a crime against food. The fat panic destroyed peanut butter's reputation for no reason. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter with whole grain bread is a healthy snack. The fat wasn't the villain, your body needed it all along. You've been lied to about food for decades. The guilt was manufactured. The foods you liked were never the problem. Stop apologizing for enjoying them.